Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And today, we're going to read a meditation. We're going to read it from The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beatty. It's the sister book to Codependent No More in The Language of Letting Go. So anyway, I read from this book all the time, so I hadn't done a meditation book, and I don't know, meditation book reading in like 2 days. So I thought today we will read this one. And this one's about families. And actually, the reason I'm picking this one is because I get so many questions about families and how to cope with families and how to set boundaries with family members. And it's actually something that I've talked on here about quite a bit. So I want to read this to you, and then I will kind of talk a little bit about how I've applied it in my life. And really how I've applied it with my relationship with my mom in the past. So, coping with families, October 2nd. There are many paths to self-care with families. Some people choose to sever connections with family members for a period of time. Some people choose to stay connected with family members and learn different behaviors. Some disconnect for a time, then return slowly on a different basis. There is no one or perfect way to deal with members of our family in recovery. It is up to each of us to choose a path that suits us and our needs at each point in time. The idea that is new to us in recovery is that we can choose. We can set the boundaries we need to set with family members. We can choose a path that works for us, without guilt and obligation or undue influence from any source, including recovery professionals. Our goal is to detach and love with family members. Our goal is to be able to take care of ourselves, love ourselves, and live healthy lives despite what family members do or don't do. We decide what boundaries or decisions are necessary to do this. It's okay to say no to our families when that is what we want. It's okay to say yes to our families if that feels right. It's okay to call time out, and it's okay to go back as a different person. God, help me choose a path that is right for me with my family. Help me understand there is no right or wrong in this process. Help me strive for forgiveness and learn to detach with love whenever possible. I understand that this never implies that I have to forfeit self-care and health for the good of the system. And I think this is like a really good meditation in talking about setting boundaries and limits with family and things like that, you know? And I've talked a lot on here about ridding your life of toxicity and negativity, and that is sometimes easier to do with people that aren't in our family. But the overriding question is, how do you do that with people that like are in your family? Like if it's a mother, you know, or if it's a father or a sibling or something like that. And that makes it a lot more difficult, right? Because we don't really know how to sever ties when we have to sit at Thanksgiving dinner. Often what that might mean is that we have to sacrifice what we want in our lives for not having to interact with that person. But I do believe that there is a way to set boundaries with somebody while still interacting with them, if that makes sense, you know? For example, if you have a mother that guilt trips a lot. My mom used to guilt trip a lot back in the day, you know? And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that relate to the guilt tripping mother. You know, I would come over to her house and she'd say, well, I've only seen you twice this week. And I'd be like, right, you've seen me twice more than a lot of people have, Mom, because I've got a lot of stuff going on in my life right now, you know? And I would feel bad about that. And I think that even in, you know, after death sometimes, my mother and I, by the time that she passed away, we had worked everything out. And I've said this a lot on my vlogs, that I don't really have any regrets, except for maybe like a birthday cake that I didn't buy for my mom the year before she passed away. But other than that, our relationship was pretty on key with where I wanted it to be, and I think she would say the same thing if she were here. But, you know, I think there are a lot of people that once somebody passes away, they look back and they say, God, I feel so guilty. I didn't do this. I didn't do that, and whatever. And so it's like guilt from the grave, if that makes sense, you know? Don't buy into that. There's nothing you can do about that now, right? And so to have that kind of guilt about what kind of child or what kind of sibling or what kind of grandchild you would have been, you know, it's pointless at this time unless you're applying that to your life and saying, well, I'm going to be better in the future towards my other parent or my other grandparents or my other siblings or my own children or whatever, my spouse. And so I think it's really, you know, an important message to learn how to set boundaries. And it's something that took me years and years to learn, even with my own mom. And, you know, I've shared the story on here about sitting in this same living room right here, you know, that she was kind of guilt tripping me, and she's like, I just am so sad, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm not responsible for your happiness. And I'm not going to get into that story again because I've told it on here enough. But, you know, it was, for me, like the words came out and I didn't even know that I had them in me to say. And so I think it's important, and, you know, like, and I was talking to a friend of mine about that not too long ago, and she said, well, that conversation would go completely different with my mother. Like, my mother would have said, yeah, you are responsible for making me happy, right? But just because you set a boundary, whether they know it or not, doesn't mean that you can't follow through with that, if that makes sense. Like, people are still going to guilt trip. You still can set your healthy boundary. You can still say, what do I need to do to take care of myself first? You also have to remember this, okay? If you're feeling guilty or you're feeling bad about your relationship with your family in your life, and you know, like, you want to be a good child, you want to be a good spouse, you want to be, you know, a good grandchild or whatever, sibling, you first have to take care of yourself to be able to do that. So if you're not doing that, like, you're not good for anybody else, if that makes sense. Okay, this is the part that I really like in here. The idea that is new to us in recovery, and you don't have to be in recovery for this to apply to you, is that we can choose. We have lots of choices in our life. We can set the boundaries we need to set with family members. We can choose a path that works for us without guilt and obligation or undue influence from any source. And I love that, right? I love that statement in this, because I think that what that says is, in any situation that we have lots of choices in how we're going to handle the situation, you know? And the thing is that you don't have to stop going to Christmas. You don't have to stop going to, you know, family dinners on Sundays. Maybe what you do is you say, okay, I'm going to be there for an hour. I'm going to come at 7, I'm going to leave at 8. And you start making that clear to people. And when you get up and they go, oh, you're going to leave, you go, yep, I need to go, because you know that past a certain time, you're going to leave. I've had to do that at times in my life, you know, like, just set a certain time in my head that this is when I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave at this point, you know, and that's okay, because you're doing self-care. And what that's allowing you to do, to set certain limits, like if me and my sister start getting in an argument, I'm going to say, listen, I don't want to argue with you. I think it would be better if one of us left. I'm just going to leave, right? And oh, no, you don't have to leave. No, I think it would be better. Let's just talk later in the week or whatever and leave, right? Because then what that allows you to do is, it allows you to continue to go to family functions. It allows you to continue to have relationships with people while setting limits and boundaries with those same people, if that makes sense. You know, I think with parents, it's a lot more difficult. I feel really blessed because my dad has never been somebody in my life that guilt trips me. He just doesn't. And I think part of it for him was that he had a very guilt-tripping mother. So he never wanted to do that to me in return, if that makes sense. And, you know, but my mom, on the other hand, like, she was kind of raised in the environment to guilt trip. So she did. And I think at times she didn't even realize that she was doing it, because when I would call her on it, she would say, I don't want to make you feel that way. And I'd say, well, you're doing a pretty good job trying to, but, you know, nobody makes me feel the way. I mean, I choose my choice. I choose my feelings. So, you know, but we can feel boxed in sometimes. We can feel like there aren't a lot of options to how we feel in certain interactions with our families. And that's where I think it gets tricky, right? Is like, well, I want to have a relationship with my parent, whatever. I think the other thing you have to realize too is that, you know, for years and years and years, especially when my mom was drinking, was I would look at other people's relationships with their parents. I did this a lot with my cousin. You know, my cousin and my aunt would go out to eat. They would, you know, go shopping together. They would do this. My mom just wasn't real capable at times until she got sober to be able to do that. And after she got sober, I mean, we had, you know, 12 years and 11 months of a fantastic relationship. But before that, she wasn't able to be that for me. And so I would constantly compare to other people. Remember, I did a video on here not too long ago when I was talking about you always lose by comparison, right? What you're given is what you're given in life, whether it's a parent, if it's a sibling or whatever, that's what you're given, you know? And to go back to another video that I did when I talked about the book, you know, If Life Were a Game, These Are the Rules, by Dr. Cherie Scott. You know, at the beginning of the book, she says in there, in life you are given a body, accept it or change it, but it's yours for life. It's very similar to that with family. In life, you are given, you know, this family of origin, you know, stick with them or get rid of them, but they're yours for life, so it's your choice, right? Change it, work on it, do what you want to do. I wish I would see more, you know, people really work on this instead of complain about it. Like, I mean, for me, it's like, I don't know, like, I've really worked hard in my life on having better relationships with my family, and it hasn't been easy. It hasn't at all, you know? But the benefits have paid off in the long run, and so when I say I wish I would see more people work on that, I mean, what I'm saying to you is, if you gotta go get in, you know, couples counseling with your sister or whatever, you know, or family counseling with your sister, or, you know, you gotta hang out with the one family member that you don't like, or really make an effort to be kinder to them during times because you wanna really be able to enjoy the rest of your family, the payoff for you, the benefits for you are great in the long run. I've had to do a lot of things with my own family that I didn't want to do because, you know, I felt like, I don't know, like, I couldn't necessarily be myself or whatever. And over time, what I learned was I could be myself and I could set limits and boundaries as well. And I could have those relationships with those family members that I wanted to have, but I could have them the way that I wanted to. And I didn't have to allow their toxicity and their negativity to affect me. And also what happened over time with some of them was the more boundaries I set, you know, at first, if you set boundaries with somebody that's rather toxic, like they're gonna like kind of like resist those boundaries. I have found in life, that's at least what I found. But over time, they kind of get used to your boundaries and they respect it, if that makes sense, you know? I think it's no mystery that, you know, like a lot of people in life like structure. They just do, you know? It makes sense to them. They like routine. A lot of people do. So when you set boundaries for relationships in your life, people get used to those boundaries. They know what to expect. And they appreciate that. So you can do the same thing with family members. It's just hard, you know? It's just harder because you don't want to hurt or offend those people. And then I think that also goes into the realm of what's the difference between a family of origin and a family of choice. And you know, very much a family of origin is who you're born into, who you can't get away from even if you want to. It's like, oh, that cousin of mine that lives on the other side of town, we don't ever talk. You know what I mean? I got one of those, Caroline. No, I'm joking. I love my cousin Caroline. But you know what I mean? Like, there's that family of origin that we're born into, but then there's that family of choice, which are friends of ours and, you know, could be sponsors or people like that in our life, you know, if you're in recovery, or other people that are in recovery, your support network or whatever you have in your life, coworkers, it could be whatever that you feel like are, you know, your family of choice. And sometimes you almost feel stronger to them or towards them than you do your own family of origin. And then that guilt trips you because you feel like, well, I should feel closer to my sister, but I feel closer to Judy that I go to meetings with 3 times a week. But that's okay, see? Because that's how the real world works. Stop questioning everything. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.